Welcome, everyone, to Survivor's Residuum, where her story is in the making. The technical definition for residuum is a substance or thing that remains or is left behind, in particular, a chemical residue. I like the geology definition because it gets to the heart of this interview series. The geology definition of residuum is a term used to describe the material derived from the in place weathering of bedrock. Depending on the type of parent rock, residuum can vary in texture from a coarse, gravelly material to clay. According to vocabulary.com, it is something left after other parts have been taken away. Synonyms are balance, remainder, residual, residue, and rest. Wherever you are listening right now, let's pause the recording, re-listen to the definitions of residuum, and then continue to listen to the interview through that lens. Welcome back, everyone. Today we are honored to have Taneshia Johnson joining us on the hot mic. So I'm going to begin the interview by listing 5 of the 10 questions that I gathered from an online database. You will have access to spin a random wheel and select a number. As we walk through your story, I'll periodically stop and ask you to spin that wheel, give me the number, and attempt to answer the question that corresponds with each number. If you decide to pass, that is definitely okay. All right, so I'm going to give actually, because we only have 10 questions this time, I'm just going to give a sample of 3 questions that might be asked when we spin the wheel. One question is, how do you prioritize self-care and manage stress in your daily life? Another question is, how did you find the courage to seek help? And what was that process like? Another question, how has your experience with depression and anxiety shaped your perspective on life and relationships? So again, we'll spin that wheel as we go throughout this interview. For our audience, I'd like to give a brief background on Taneshia Johnson. Taneshia Johnson is a social worker and a community advocate. She's worked with people of all economic statuses and cultures for over 18 years. She says one thing that she finds common, regardless of race, gender, or culture, is a lack of self-care. Many people she works with, she says, spends more time helping family and friends than themselves. They lack the energy and dedication to complete their own goals and desires for life because they are exhausting themselves supporting others. I just want to say I am so excited to have Taneshia on this podcast. I had a group of young high schoolers who were actually transitioning to become college students in 2020, and we would do online sessions preparing them for what is to come. And we had Tanisha on as a guest, and wow, 2020, that was 5 years ago, and I was watching back the video and just listening to some of the gems that she dropped in. And man, when I went on your website, I mean, first of all, I love the website. Nice, clean, neat. I'm one of those like nerdy people, but I mean, it is just amazing to see what you are doing now and the transformation. And I am just so honored and happy to have you today. I know we have you for just a short time, so let's go ahead and begin. Girl, you are killing the game. I'm so honored that you've agreed to sit down with me and spend the next, 45 minutes or so unboxing some things. So, we always ask every guest on here, do you consider yourself a survivor or do you believe you are still surviving? And how would you classify yourself as we're talking about navigating dark waters and surviving depression and anxiety?
I would classify myself as a survivor. I think that the sticky part of healing from anything is first being able to recognize what it is and where it came from. And for me, my healing journey has been about healing from people pleasing and codependency. And anxiety and depression are behavior patterns that stem from that trauma. And so once I kind of realized that, like, okay, this is a trauma response, I felt like I better understood how to tackle it, and it helped me be able to recognize that back then I really wasn't living, it was about surviving. but now that I have more tools, it's about using those tools and living out life in a different way.
Perfect. I love that response. So we classify you as a survivor. So I want to just go ahead and jump right in. I want you to share your story briefly about struggling with depression and anxiety. You talked about when we were talking to the girls how you were diagnosed with dysthymia, general anxiety. And a lot of people think that, when you're just going about your day and, you're still smiling, you're still working, you're still taking a shower, you're still doing the things that you need to do, that you don't battle with depression. So I'm going to ask a few questions so you can kind of go into your early story. What were some early signs or triggers of depression and anxiety? And then how did these conditions affect your daily life, your relationships, your work? And then what were some pivotal moments in that journey? Now, you don't have to answer all those questions in that order, but this is just to frame kind of like your early diagnoses and how you knew you were struggling with depression. Go ahead and take us there.
It was subtle at first. I mean, it was stuff like I just didn't have a desire to do the things that I normally would do. Then I noticed the way I grew myself kind of fell off a little bit. And when I say fell off, I mean like I originally used to like always wanna style my hair, try new lipstick and, shadows and, try different colors and, different types of clothing, and then I noticed that it kind of just resorted to me, like pulling on my hair back or slapping on my wig or, putting on leggings and a t-shirt. I didn't really put a lot of effort into myself anymore, but I had also normalized a lot of these things because when I was going through it, I also was in grad school. I was 27, and so I was on this peak of like I'm in grad school. I'm working this internship program, so everything makes sense. Like, well, I just don't have time, to do it. But once I kind of hit 30 and I saw myself like I was out of grad school, I was in the process of getting the job that I really wanted. I was like, okay, something's off because I should feel better now because things are different now. But it was still the same thing. And then the morning that I couldn't get out the bed, that's what really did it for me. I was like, something's wrong, something's off here.
So what prompted you after you said something's off? I was again looking back at the video and you were like, I'm just gonna eat better food. I'm gonna pray this away. What prompted you to say, okay,
I was on my way to work one day and it had been a regular morning for me where I'm always at that time, I was always rushing, I was always late. I'm still late, but, it's a different it's a different reason now. Back then, it would take me about 45 minutes just to kinda pull myself out of the bed, so that's why I was late. But when I went to work with 2 different shoes on, my coworker noticed it, and she was like, "Tanisha, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah," and she was like, "Well, you just seem so sad," and she was like, "Have you ever thought about going to a therapist?" And I told her like, "Yeah, I used to play around with it, but I was like, I really don't need it." Plus at that time I was like in a state of like, well, I'm going to be a therapist. Like I know what a therapist would do. So because that's what I'm in school for, so I don't need to go. I just figured I'm gonna therapeutize myself.
I can understand that. It's like what I have found out, shout out to all my old roommates. The last, 2 long-term roommates I've had were nurses. And what I have found out is doctors and nurses need the most help. The ones that are giving the care to other people, unfortunately, they need the most help. And there's nothing wrong with seeking that help because if you would give it to somebody else, why wouldn't you give it to yourself? I want to go into the fact that you have written 2 books, and I just want to kind of go over what is it that prompted you out of your depression to go back into what is something that you enjoyed and use it as maybe a form of healing and also a form of healing other people. Just go ahead and let us know what are the premise of both of your books and how did those things help bring you out of that depression and anxiety?
Yeah, well, I had always wanted to write, like even as a child, I had my diary, and it's like I upgraded to, well, I'm probably gonna date myself right now, but back in the 90s, they had word processors. And my mom had bought me this word processor because she saw I like to write. So I used to type out poems and stuff on my word processor, and then I would print them out and have like a little binder. And when I went to college, that was the first thing I told my academic counselor. I was like, I think I want to write. And, she was like, well, honey, there's not really a lot of money in writing. She was like, I don't even really know how to guide you in that. She was like, do you really want to major in English? And she had mentioned some other stuff. And it almost sounded kind of boring as she was talking about it. And I was like, well, and she was like, I think it's going to be too hard. Like, what else do you like to do? And so I went to my default, which was, well, I really like helping people. Like, I know how to help people. And so that's when she told me, oh, well, you should be a social worker. And so I just took that and kind of ran with it. And, before I knew it, I got my bachelor's in human development. And then I started working in the field. I worked in family shelters. I worked with homeless adults who have like dual diagnosis. And I've tried various things. Like I've worked in like a geriatric clinic, an Alzheimer's clinic. I literally worked with everybody like from 0 all the way up to 90 years old, trying to figure out, well, which one do I like better? And after about 4 years of that, I noticed that I couldn't level up financially without a master's degree. So then I went and got my master's degree. So I just ran with the social worker idea to the max. And when I registered to get my hours to start considering being a therapist, I ran into a place where I couldn't complete my hours because of my position. And then I had to get another position. And I think, yeah, I was 35 then. And that was kind of like it was a breaking point for me. Like it woke me up. And because I had been in therapy by now for about 5 years. And I was like, Tanisha, do you really want to do this? Because me and my therapist at that time were really trying to help me see like how much of this is trauma based, me living this life, and how much of this is really Tanisha. Like, what does Tanisha want to do? And so I was at that breaking point. Like, do I really want to do this? Like, now I'm going to have to get another job just to get these hours. And I don't even know if I want to be a therapist. And so that's when I said, you know what? What did I always want to do? I was doing a lot of soul searching, and I remembered that I used to like to write. And so I started writing, and then an idea came like, well, I wonder if I should write a book. So then I wrote the book, and in the process of me writing my first book, When Depression and Anxiety Have a Voice, I didn't know anything about book writing. Like I had to look up everything from scratch, and I found out I have to publish myself. That was a whole journey. I was like, well, how do I do this? It grew me in a lot of ways because it gave me confidence that I didn't have before. And when I saw God just like opening up all these doors for me from the beginning of my journey, like when I first sat, so for anyone who would like to write a book and you're trying to figure out how, the first thing you need is an editor and you need a graphic designer. So I was looking on IG trying to follow all these other authors. At the time, I was following like the hashtag Black authors, trying to connect with people to see how other people were doing it. And I would send people DMs. Sometimes they would respond. Most of the time, they wouldn't. But one lady told me, she said, you should look for this lady named Monique Mensa because she's a self-publishing assistant. So she can help you figure out how to self-publish a book. So I set up an appointment with her and everything was great. And she also told me that she could also edit my book. And then she hit me with, so yeah, to work with me is gonna be 2,700. And I was like, what? How am I supposed to get this money?
Ooh.
I was like, where is this money coming from? And then I said, okay. She said she took payment plans. And then, she kind of set me up from there. She was like, are you working with anybody around your business? Because you need a bank account. Or she was like, if you're gonna self-publish a book, you need like a title for your business, you need a website. And so at the same time she was telling me this, I got an email from the city of Concord saying that they were offering free coaching sessions to business new businesses. So I registered, in Contra Costa County, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm a new business." And so then she gave me, like, a list of everything I needed. And so then she was like, "You have to get a fictitious business name, and you gotta get a business account, checking account." And it's like I'm thinking to myself, once again, like, to complete my goals, I'm running through all these hoops. I go to the bank, open up the business account. The lady's like, "It says that you're pre-approved for a business credit card." Long story short, I got the business credit card. They gave me like a $9,000 limit. I feel like Imma cry, but, I'm a very, like, spiritual person, and so I was like, "Tanisha, the way these doors are opening, like, this is God." Like, it was just an incredible journey of, like, people helping me, like, emails coming out the blue, go to the bank, she talking about business cards. At that time, she had, like, also consolidated all my credit, so then I didn't have any more credit, and I was just free from debt, I was free, and I was like, "Yeah, this is the journey I'm supposed to be on." And
That's amazing.
it was amazing, girl. I was like, "Wow, yeah, like, I'm supposed to do this."
Thank you for sharing that with us. So, going back to you were talking to your therapist and you were trying to figure out how much of that is trauma and how much of it is you. When she's
Yes.
saying how much of it is you, and this is to help us talk to our listeners out there, when you're talking about how much of your depression journey and your anxiety surrounding that was trauma, did you uncover that there was more trauma than just you? And then how do you interpret just you? What does just you mean? Is it that right now you're in your master's, you're going through this, trying to get this book situated, all these different things? Is that stressing you out? Is that making you depressed? But then clinical depression is a whole different beast than just being stressed. So, how did you resolve that?
Yeah, it was a combination of working with her and then also reading on my own because I love to read, and I was committed to trying to figure out what exactly I was struggling with. And what I found was the depression was something that I've been dealing with since childhood because of the trauma. And the initial trauma is, being abandoned by both of my parents. I was abandoned by one parent emotionally, and I was abandoned by another parent physically and emotionally. The way that I cope with that was I became like the quote unquote perfect daughter. I dealt with my primary parent that raised me did not have a lot of bandwidth to help me self-regulate, to help me understand day-to-day life. They would just say stuff like, "I'm paying all this money for you to go to school to get an education. You need to figure out how to do it," kind of vibe. And I didn't realize that at 5, 6, 10 years old, that's a lot of stress, on a person, on a child. And so I grew up kind of believing that I have to perform, be the best, I have to fit in, I have to find ways to help this parent help me, because if I don't, the consequences are like a major blow up, and
Wait,
physical
I just want to
abuse.
stop right there. You said you felt you had to find ways to help your parents help you.
Yeah.
That's deep. That's deep.
No, yeah, it's true. I kinda saw early on, and all of this happens in the subconscious too, like, we don't know, but that's how beautiful the brain is. The brain is trained to help us survive, but what happens is when trauma hits the brain at a young age, like between 0 to 6, a child doesn't have any way to navigate it, so they assume that this must be happening to me because I deserve this, because I'm this quote unquote bad person. So then it becomes, how can I manage, around this trauma? And for codependency and people pleasing specifically, you get trained to believe I have to help people in order to survive. And so that was my life. And when I kind of unpacked that, I was already like 30 years old. And the moments of depression that I went through was because deep down inside, I really didn't want that life. My inner child was struggling for years and I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't paying attention to my own feelings. I was eating it away. I was vacationing away. I was shopping it, away. Anytime I would get feelings, I would just try to find something to snap me right back out of it so I wouldn't have to think about it anymore. And I found out that that's also another survival skill that people use, because if I actually had to think about the level of physical, emotional, verbal abuse that I was experiencing as a young child, I wouldn't have been able to make it. It would have been too much of an impact.
It's interesting when you say you were suppressing your inner child, or like you kind of just wanted to be a child. And when I think about, again, going back to the previous kind of discussion we had with the young ladies, you were saying that was that 18-year-old that you had
Yeah,
to go back and kind of identify with. Once you
yeah.
realized, once you were going through counseling, it was that going back to what you wanted at that time and that you were unable to express. We're going to take a break and we're going to have you go ahead and spin the wheel. We're just going to ask some random questions. So go ahead and spin the wheel and let me know what number you have.
Yay, this is exciting. Let me see. The sound effects, I love it. This is cool. Okay, I got 8.
Eight, number eight. All right. Number eight says, how do you handle setbacks or triggers that bring on depression and anxiety? That's a good one.
Now, recently, I pray. Now, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I was still angry with God, and so I would write and eat and, try to kinda, like, affirm myself that, like, I don't feel the way I feel, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. But since November, I pray, and I also remind myself that this is just a moment in my life. It doesn't define, where I am, it doesn't define who I am. It's just a moment that I'm going through right now.
That's good. That's good. Well, that actually leads into our second segment about coping mechanisms. So, we want to go ahead and explore your coping mechanisms and strategies for managing depression and anxiety. The first question I have for you is, what self care practices have been helping? And then, how do you navigate negative thoughts and emotions?
I love these questions. Well, the self-care practices that have been helpful are walking, praying, having moments of just solitude. I like to just sit in the park sometimes and literally just sit there and just people watch. And then having a good a sleep routine has helped me a lot over the last 2 months because I didn't have that before. I would, like, go to bed at 1, 2 o'clock and wake up at, like, 7 or 8, and my whole day would just be delayed, because I was tired. Um, but ever since I started going to bed at 11, waking up at 6:30 or 7, like, I feel better. I notice I have more energy. I notice I'm more productive, which helps me with the depression too, because so much of depression tells us that we're behind. It's like depression is like living in the past, anxiety is living in the future. So I was like stuck between the two.
Oh, can you say that again? I'm sorry. You said depression is living in the past and anxiety is looking too far in the future, right?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Can you break that down a little bit and what you learned about that?
Yeah, so with depression generally comes because there's a current experience that's reminding us of a past experience. And because that past experience hasn't been resolved, now we feel depressed in the current moment. And generally with that also comes these flood of thoughts like I've been here before, I should have did this. It's like we're very overcritical of ourselves, and for most people, that takes you down a rabbit hole of further being depressed because now your brain is validating your feelings, and so now you sink more into the depression. But the feeling itself is it's a memory from the past, that we're bringing into our present. Whereas with anxiety, it's like we're thinking an overload about, well, what about this? What about this? And we're living in that moment as if we're experiencing it right now. And that's why a lot of those emotions come on because our thought process is connected, to our body. And so now our bodies think, well, this is happening right now and we're not prepared and we don't have this and we don't have that. When in reality, this is like a future event that hasn't happened yet. So yeah, it's a tough balance. It has been a tough balance for me to live in the present, and learn what that looks like.
Speaking of the balance, we're going to go back to, how do you navigate negative thoughts and emotions? And then piggybacking off of that, because it is a balance, what role has therapy, support groups, or even medication played in your journey, in that navigation process?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that because looking back, because I remember my therapist at the time, she had mentioned medication. And I remember I stopped going to her because I said, oh, now she trying to put me on medication. Like, girl, I've
No,
been
we don't
talking
do
to you.
that.
Yeah, I'm like, I've been talking to you for 4 years. Like, I just need some direction. Now you trying to put me on medication. But looking back, maybe I probably should have done. It wasn't explained to me, what the medication could do. Like, I feel like I probably should have taken medication maybe for 3 or 4 months just to kinda give my brain like a redo, kinda like a reprogramming, but I didn't go that route. Instead, what helped me with that reprocessing was I was going to a codependency support group. I was also going to church at the time. I was also going to therapy, and then I was also doing a lot of self-development workshops for myself. Some great people that helped me were, Iyanla Van Zant. I read her book, Finding Peace in Broken Pieces. And then I had the pleasure of being in one of her classes. She had like a virtual class. I think it was like 2021, 2022. And that was a good program. It was like a 4-week class. I also took a lot of classes with Stefan Labussiere, he's like a relationship coach and author. But he gave me a lot of insight just on myself and who I am. And so it was a real journey, of just trying new things, trying to figure out, okay, well, who is Tanisha outside of this role? Having the experiences is what helped me change my thought process because my thought process told me that I have to stay in this role because how am I going to maintain my relationships if I'm not helping people at the same capacity or if I'm not showing up? But having those new experiences gave me a different view of myself. And it gave me new tools, and I started to see how I could merge the two. It's like the boundaries really were about boundaries within myself, about how I was dealing with people. I think so much of boundary teaching kind of gives the impression that we have to use boundaries like protection so that people don't hurt us. But what I found for me is I had to use the boundaries so that I don't hurt me because I was the one that was initiating all of this.
Wait a minute. Okay, this is the 3rd time. We go say that again? Say it again? You had to use boundaries for what?
I had to use boundaries to so that I didn't hurt myself because I was the one that was initiating all these things. I was the one that was allowing people to call me late. I was the one that was allowing people to put me in, situations and spaces that I didn't really want to be in. I was the person that was choosing these friends. I was the person that was choosing these mates. And now once I'm in it, I'm agitated because I want you to be different because of how I treat you. When I think about it now, it doesn't make any sense, but it made perfect sense back then because that was the same model I had with my parents. Like, I'm this great daughter. I'm not giving you any trouble. I go to school, I get good grades. I'm 16 and I'm working. I'm buying my own clothes, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how come you don't love me? This is still not enough. And subconsciously, we take that mindset into all of our relationships. So now in friendships and intimate relationships, in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. It's like there was no recognition that someone else's behavior had nothing to do with me. This is who they are. So when I got that reality, I was like, oh, wow. So I really need to work on me because I don't have good discernment. I don't have good assessment skills. I'm struggling to recognize when someone can't show up for me, and I'm internalizing that as this person is purposely doing this. So it was really deep. Girl, it was when I got to the real core of healing, so much of it was about me. It was nothing about other people. And that's why I wrote my second book, Healing Doesn't Look Like That, because in the beginning, I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. I had to get all these people in alignment and I had to show them this new Tanisha that's not taking this anymore. And so that's what I was doing. And everything was going bad for me. People were upset. Then I was I was trying to, rationalize the upset. Yeah, when they upset because, you set your boundaries, and then when you look on social media, you can find a whole bunch of information to validate that. But the reality for me was I'm internalizing their behavior, and that's my stuff. That's stuff from childhood. I'm internalizing and I'm saying, "You're treating me like this on purpose." Never once did I think this person is struggling in this area, and that's the reason why they're showing up like how they're showing up.
Wow, yeah, I'm in tears because well, first it started when it's like, "How come I'm the perfect daughter? How come you don't love me?" You know? And but then to come to the realization that when people hurt you, you still have to do the work for you. Ooh, like, that's difficult for me because 'cause I'm like, "Nope, cut you off. You messed me up. Forget that. I'm not doing no work because of you." Like, I don't wanna do work because of you. But when you went through counseling and you realized that a lot of your depression and anxiety stemmed from your relationship or lack thereof with your parents, have you ever been able to address that with them? And then does that help your healing?
I did. I did address I addressed it with both. With my mom, it was slightly easier because I recognize how it happened, like, I get it. She didn't expect to be a single parent, and then she also just didn't have the bandwidth herself to be able to show up for me in a lot of ways. My mother was a provider, but she wasn't necessarily a nurturer. But she didn't get nurtured by my grandmother. My mother is the last child of 12. And so to have 12 children, you're exhausted, right? So even in that regard, I had to accept that you were expecting her to give you something that she didn't get. And we didn't have all this information about childhood development and stuff like in the 80s, when we were born. Our parents were literally just doing whatever was done to them. So that part was easier. With my dad, it was much more feelings of like physical abandonment because he lived in Florida and me and my mom lived in California. So there was always a sense of how come you're not here with us? He got remarried twice. And so I kind of watched my dad just have this whole lifestyle that didn't include me. So there was much more anger and resentment and frustration with him. But I did get an opportunity to have that conversation with him about how I felt. And that was actually that was when I first realized that I struggled to look at other people's perspective. Because when I sat down with my dad and he told me, he said, I was already married, when your mom got pregnant. I didn't expect this to happen. I tried my best to co-parent from the beginning, but your mother was really angry. That anger pushed me away. He said he also wasn't settled in his life financially because the first time I met my dad, I was 6. And so he told me that's the reason why I hadn't spent time with him until I was 6. It wasn't me. It was a combination of him not having the tools to deal with her emotions and also him financially not being in a space to be able to bring me to him. And as an adult hearing it, it made a lot of sense.
Imma need your therapy sessions because 'cause I'm over here like, "So you shouldn't have got her pregnant." You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm mad, but I
I
get it.
was
You
too,
you
yeah.
have to rationalize. We have to realize that our parents are adults, but they still have those 18-year-old thoughts, those inner child things. They're human too, and so a lot of things standards that we hold them to shameless plug, I'm having a live podcast about that, Sins of Our Mothers, Fault of Our Daughters. I'd ask you to join. But, we hold them to these standards, and it's just like us, you know? I couldn't fathom being a parent at 23, but my mother was, and so sometimes it takes being an adult to have those conversations to realize, "Okay, I get it." It doesn't minimize your hurt. It doesn't minimize your abandonment. It doesn't take away the trauma. It helps you work through it
Yeah.
because you come from an understanding point of view. Let's take this second to go to our wheel and pick another random question.
Yay! This wheel is so cool. Okay, let's see which one I get this time. It's the sound effects that gets me. That's cool. This time it's 7.
Okay, number 7. What are some things you wish you knew before starting your journey? So, before starting your journey to wholeness, to wellness, what are some things you wish you knew?
Wish I knew that the real sense of healing came from me. You know, I spent a lot of years thinking that I had to protect myself. I thought that for me, it was almost like I'm okay, but the people that are in my life are not. So I have to show them who I am and help them see, like, listen, if you want to be in a friendship or intimate relationship with me or family member, whoever it was, like, this is how you have to act because this is what I deserve. That was my mindset for probably the first 5 years that I was healing, like from like 30. Well, I started my journey really at like 29. So it was like from 29 to 35. I was like, that's what it's all about. I'm okay, but these people are not. They're taking advantage of me and all this stuff. But looking back, I wish I would have known earlier on that I was the reason why this was happening. It was my decision making, it was my behavior patterns. It's just so tricky. Codependency is one of those things that sneak up on you and you don't even realize it because you're just so used to it. I would do stuff like somebody would be talking about a busy weekend they have and like, I'll help you. "Oh, okay, I'll do it." And then, I'm there and I'm doing it and like things are chaotic or things are crazy or they don't seem appreciative that I'm here. And then I'm holding resentment and I'm holding anger around it. And I wish I would have known earlier that that's actually what I need to address. Like, I need to tackle why do I feel like I have to insert myself, like, and I didn't know that back then.
I just want to say once again, you are very mature. You have grown
Oh,
because
thank you.
that it's me, not them. No, it's you, boo. It's you. That for me, it's you. I'm just gonna have to cut you off right now. So I'm gonna have to sit down and learn and glean at your feet because I'm not there yet. You did this to me.
Well, thank you because you know my journey. Like when you first met me, I was just starting. So this is like 10 years of developing. And, I still cry tears at nighttime when I'm by myself because I wish I would have known earlier. I'm still grieving a lot of my 30s.
Wow, that's so yeah, I mean, I think that right there is the bedrock of this podcast. It's like when you are a survivor or still surviving, there's that residuum. There's that extra.
Yes.
There's that still crying at night. There's that because you you have gone through something. You have come out triumphant, but victory still has scars. There's still scars in victory. I just want to take this moment to discuss your resilience and your hope for the future. And so, the questions that I want to kind of pose to you, and you can answer however, how did you learn to reframe your relationships with depression and anxiety? And when I say relationships, I'm not talking about relationships with people, your relationship with depression and anxiety. How have you learned to reframe that? And then what message would you share with others struggling with these conditions?
That's a really good question. When depression and anxiety happen, because they still do, I call them my best friends that I wish would go away sometimes. But when they come on, I really try to practice mindfulness, bringing myself back to my present moment. Being able to rephrase my thoughts has been really helpful. When depression comes in and says, Tanisha, here you go again. You've done this again, XYZ. I go ahead and affirm that thought. Like, you know what? This does sound familiar. And I'm also learning. I'm learning, I'm growing. The fact that I'm aware of it is huge. And I'm going to have hope for the future that this lesson now is going to help me in my future. And when anxiety comes, I do a lot. Deep breathing has really helped me tremendously. Just being able to take like 3 or 4 deep breaths in moments of anxiety and ground myself, remind myself like I'm living in this moment right now. There's nothing I can do about the future. If things do fall apart, I will still be okay.
Again, for the people in the back,
If things do fall apart, I will still be okay. That's been a game changer. Just reminding myself that Tanisha, this is literally just an experience. This is not something that's gonna define your whole life. And then honestly, just embracing it, just saying, this is who I am. This is the reality of my life. I'm going to have moments of depression. I'm going to have moments of anxiety. A trauma that lasted for 30 years is not going to go away, in 10 years. And that's the whole piece of being able to grow. And that's kind of how I live through life, just kind of recognizing that I'm growing. Sometimes the speed is going to be slower than others. Lately, I've been working on a support system for myself, really trying to be around friends, like yourself that see me, that nurture me, that can pour into me. I'm learning my own love language so that I know how to recognize it in other people, which is huge for me. And then I've never been either, but I'm really excited about meeting someone and being able to get support because I had to recognize for my healing that this whole single thing I was doing is actually not good for my healing journey either because I need to be in a relationship where I'm loved and nurtured and supported because that's something that I never got.
so you said you never was before. Was that fear? Was that anxiety of the future or what would happen if you were to be with someone who loved you and then left you because you had those feelings of abandonment from your parents? What just quickly, what was that? Take me to where your mind was when you said, "I don't need anybody," and now you do, or now you want somebody.
Yeah, like I just, cause I also have, so there's different attachment styles. Girl, I could be talking to you all day, but it's different attachment styles too. And mine is fearful avoidant. And so I desire relationships, but I'm also fearful of relationships too. Are they gonna abandon me? When the real me comes out, is this person still gonna be here? That also stemmed from childhood experiences because both of my parents struggled to support me in my emotions. So I had to become this quote unquote person in order to be loved by them. And so that's how I'm navigating the world now. As long as I'm this Tanisha that is helpful, that's smiling, that's kind, that's nurturing and giving, I will be loved. But God forbid if they see this other Tanisha that's depressed and hasn't taken a shower in 2 days. Like, girl, ain't nobody gonna deal with that. And so that was the mindset that I had. And it was like through therapy and through, reading 100 books and prayer, of course, that helped me recognize like God has someone out there that can handle me. Like just because these parents could not, it doesn't mean that other people can.
That part, and I am putting a shameless plug right now. We are searching for a mate for Tanisha, y'all, and don't bring no scrubs because we're not doing that over here, okay? This is a beautiful, lovely, intelligent Black woman, strong, okay, and self-made. So, gentlemen, we are taking suitors at this time, okay? And you better be God-fearing, don't come with no other crazy mess. Understood?
Right, that part.
So before we close, we're gonna do rapid fire. We're just gonna have you spin the wheel 3 times, and we're just gonna do quick answers for those random questions.
This is cool. Okay, here we go. 3.
All right, number 3 says, "What are some common misconceptions about depression and anxiety that you have encountered?"
Common misconceptions I've encountered is people thinking that it's a temporary feeling. That's false. So depression or anxiety is not temporary. It's something that comes and goes, but it does have an onset, which is different from other emotions.
All right, your next number.
I got 6 this time.
Okay, 6. How has your experience with depression and anxiety shaped your perspective on life and relationships? Well, I think we just talked about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to reiterate, it's kinda helped me recognize that this is a this is a battle. I hate to call it a battle, but it's something that I might struggle with, for a while. And so learning how to be upfront about it and learning how to step out of my comfort zone of just normally I'm present in relationships, but I'm not really in it as like a role. And when I say that, like, it's helping me see, like, "Tanisha, you need to let people see all versions of you. Don't try to be perfect. Just be who you are, and be comfortable with that." So that's been a game changer for me with managing it.
Yeah, be your authentic self, as you call it. Definitely be your authentic self because at the end of the day, we could put, and I'm just going to use the physical exterior. We can put, makeup on, we put the lashes on, we look cute, blah blah blah, right? But at the end of the day, there's going to be a time where your mate, your spouse is going to see you waking up in the morning. And so let's think about that in the way of emotions and everything else. You can put makeup on it, you can put rouge lipstick on your emotions and try to fix who you truly are. But at the end of the day, that raw, unfiltered, good morning breath, all of that is gonna be there one day. And that person that loves all of that, that's the one. That's the one for you. So, our last question, go ahead and spin the wheel one more time.
I got 10.
Okay. Did we do 10? No, we did not do 10. Oh, and this is perfect. This is so perfect to end it out. What message of hope would you share with others who may be struggling?
My message of hope would be to keep going. Look at your healing as a journey. Even if you do label yourself as surviving, it's just temporary. Eventually you will get to a space where you will say, I'm a survivor. And if you are a survivor, then I would say my message for hope for you is that you continue to pursue life every day, and what it really looks like to live and be yourself and enjoy things that you like to do. And also, be able to recognize areas that you're still learning, who you are and what you need, and be able to accept that that is essentially what healing and growing is about.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for coming on. I could sit and listen to you all day because the way you frame stuff and you're just so calm. I love it. You guys, go ahead and check out TJ Self Care. We are going to go ahead and put the link into her website. You want to book a session with her if you need to. You need to go out and buy both of her books, go out and support. Also, if you're struggling with depression and anxiety, I encourage you to prioritize your mental health. Seek support when needed, seek medication when needed, seek therapy when needed, groups when needed, and ask someone for help. You're not alone. There are so many people in this predicament. There's so many people who struggle with depression, clinical depression, anxiety, and things that, like Tanisha said, will not just go away. And you're not alone and you're not weird. You're not strange. We want to change the narrative and move into a society that prioritizes healing, whole body healing, not just for the physical body, but for mental as well. Again, thank you so much, Tanisha, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Survivor's Residuum. We will meet here on our YouTube page every third Sunday at 3 p.m. for a new interview of his or her story. And remember, don't forget to remember to use your noggin. Bye.